Vaccines are at an all-time low. Measles is at what I think will soon be an all-time high in recent years. And the origin story is Andrew Wakefield.
Rolling forward, Dr. Sister Science Facts.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to Rolling Forward,
The podcast about science.
I'm Dr. Alicia Rowland.
I'm Dr. Stephanie Rowland.
You added an extra line.
I'm just going to keep making you introduce us.
We are both part-time clinicians and part-time researchers.
And we may be part-time, but we are board certified. I'm a board certified psychiatrist and Alicia is a board certified pediatrician. I just feel like these credentials are getting more and more important as people are going out there representing themselves as having various forms of medical training.
We started this podcast as a way to help non-medical families understand health news.
And it's funny because even though we're both doctors, we're actually from a non-medical family ourselves. We really relied on the news and media and elected officials to guide our understanding of health.
Rolling forward, Dr. Sister Science Facts.
And here we are today where we have all of these officials in positions of authority saying, hey, don't count on me for medical advice.
And that was a quote from RFK Jr., who said,
I don't think people should be taking medical advice from me.
I don't think people should be taking medical advice from me.
And he is leading HHS along with his anti-vaccine agenda. You know, RFK Jr. really is pushing this hoax that vaccines cause autism. And we've talked about this a lot in prior episodes, but I think this episode's let us really dive into where this whole idea about vaccines and autism even comes from.
And like lots of fake news, it actually comes from one origin story. There's like, what is it? The villain's origin story?
Hey, Auntie.
Want to know how I got these scars?
In a comic, you know how you can tell who the arch villain's going to be? He's the exact opposite of the hero. And most times they're friends like you and me.
This is the villain origin story of the Vaccine-Autism hoax.
And let's get into it.
Are you ready?
I am not ready.
So, Alicia, do you know about this guy named Andrew Wakefield?
I actually know a lot less about Andrew Wakefield than I should as a pediatrician. You have talked a lot about him in the past and have referenced some books that you have read, and it's been particularly fascinating, but I think this is going to be a really educational episode for me.
This is going to be story time. You know, as physicians, we really focus on the data about vaccines and autism, and we know that data really well. Vaccines do not cause autism, but the story of where this whole hoax comes from is really fascinating. And it starts with a man named Andrew Wakefield, who's a physician in the 1990s, living and working in the UK on a liver transplant service. And he's a physician who's doing research, and his whole focus is on GI illness, gastrointestinal illness, things like inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. This is really his focus.
I know less about Andrew Wakefield than I should, but I'm not hearing anything about neurodevelopment, brain development, autism in his history or expertise.
Because it's not there. He doesn't have expertise in autism. He's a surgeon who's studying inflammatory bowel disease at a time that a lot is going on about H. pylori. What do you know about H. pylori?
H. pylori is a bacteria that is a common cause of stomach ulcers in much of the world.
That's right. And now we understand that this bacteria causes stomach ulcers. But let me tell you, when a group of doctors in Australia first suggested that a bacteria caused stomach ulcers, it was remarkable. Nobody believed them. They said stress causes stomach ulcers. You must be wrong. And so they were widely discredited about this hypothesis about H. pylori causing stomach ulcers.
It was initially dismissed as, I can't even say this word.
How do you say what?
Prepos.
Preposterous.
I can't say that word.
Preposterous. Go ahead. Preposterous.
Pre or pre?
Preposterous.
He was dismissed. This idea was dismissed as being preposterous. Preposterous. It was dismissed as being totally preposterous by other GI doctors.
And eventually, these doctors were able to show that H. pylori did cause stomach ulcers, and they then went on to win the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2005.
2005.
But this is getting ahead, so let's rewind. So Andrew Wakefield's this doctor doing research on GI illness at a time that this H. pylori bacteria causing ulcers idea is really taking hold, because this is a few years before they go on to win the Nobel Prize. And he says, hey, there must be some pathogen, some cause of these inflammatory bowel diseases.
Our understanding at the time and our current understanding about most inflammatory bowel disease is that it's autoimmune. And so there's no bacteria or virus that's causing these illnesses.
It's your own immune system that for some reason starts to target the tissues and attack itself. And that's our understanding of autoimmune illness. And there's a lot of autoimmune illnesses out there. Things like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis,
Dermatomyositis, thyroid disease, things like Hashimoto's thyroiditis.
And so this is a common cause of illness, but he felt like there had to be a different cause. So he pulls out these big textbooks and he goes through them and he says, ha 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 ha, measles must cause Crohn's disease.
He has no history or training in virology or the study of viruses, no history or training in infectious disease, in pediatrics, in psychiatry. He self-describes his training in virology, which is the study of viruses, and measles is a virus, as, I quote, I sat down with 2 volumes of a virology textbook and worked through it.
So he decides that his hypothesis is that measles causes Crohn's disease, this type of inflammatory bowel disease. And he published a paper where he tried to link vaccines to Crohn's disease. His idea was that vaccines were causing Crohn's disease. Really unclear. There were a lot of question marks. There were a lot of hypothetical statements in this paper. And he didn't say anything specifically about the MMR, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. He just said, hey, maybe vaccines cause Crohn's disease. I don't know. Maybe they do.
That sounds like a lot weaker evidence than we've been talking about.
Well, you have to understand, this is a man who loves the media. And so after this paper comes out, he is making sure that his papers are getting picked up. And it's actually the media that first specifies that MMR might be the cause of Crohn's disease. So he's not the person who initially says MMR vaccine. He puts out this very amorphous, cloudy case series. And then the media's like, it's MMR.
I have so many things I want to say about the media.
There are so many questions about this. So right around the time that he is doing this, there is a mom in the UK who is launching a campaign saying that the MMR vaccine damaged her son's brain. She says that she is going to sue the manufacturers of the MMR vaccine and is looking for people who have similar cases to what she thinks she's experienced, which is her son was totally normal before the MMR vaccine, and she is saying she noticed very serious changes in him after this vaccine.
I'm so curious what happens next.
Well, what happens next is that a lawyer, Richard Barr, receives a contract from the British government to represent litigants in a potential lawsuit, a class action lawsuit, against the manufacturers of the MMR vaccine. And as soon as Richard Barr, the lawyer, has this contract, he goes looking for an expert witness. You always need an expert witness.
And let me guess. He chooses someone who's neither an expert nor a witness?
That's right. He sets up a deal with Andrew Wakefield. Andrew Wakefield signs a contract with this lawyer for very, very high hourly rates in order to make a case against the MMR vaccine. At this point, there is no evidence that the MMR vaccine is linked with anything, but Andrew Wakefield signs this contract accepting very high hourly rates in order to find evidence that the MMR vaccine is dangerous. And at the same time that he's signing that contract, Andrew Wakefield is setting up a research program to study the harms of the MMR vaccine.
Pause. If we go back to our last episode and many episodes in the past, some of the big concerns that Casey Means has put forward, some of the big concerns that RFK has put forward, has been conflict of interest in research. Sounds like this is a big conflict of interest.
Such a big conflict of interest. He's getting paid based on the idea that he's going to prove that the MMR vaccine is dangerous when there's no evidence yet. So he's launching a research campaign at the same time to show that the MMR vaccine is dangerous.
And yet this is the research that they think is high quality.
Oh, it is not.
Is this not high quality research that Andrew Wakefield performs? Tell me more.
Let me tell you about the study that he starts at this time that leads to this whole hoax that vaccines cause autism. And it is not placebo controlled. It is not any of these gold standards of research evidence. This is a case series of 12 children.
I'm sorry, 12?
Yes. So after Andrew Wakefield signs this contract, this case series begins of 12 children whose parents all claim that they have had a regression, a change in their social skill and development, and that they developed autism after receiving the MMR vaccine.
A regression is a loss of developmental milestones. So this is someone who used to walk and is no longer walking, who used to talk is no longer talking, and is not actually seen with the development of autism spectrum disorder.
That is right. And yet that doesn't stop Andrew Wakefield. He publishes this paper in February of 1998 in The Lancet, which is
huge, important medical journal.
Yes. He publishes this paper of a case series of 12 children, claiming that this showed a temporal or time-based relationship where normal children received the MMR vaccine and subsequently developed behavioral changes suggestive of autism. And this is the paper that led to this false belief that autism was related to the MMR vaccine.
I feel like there's more to this paper.
There is so much more to this paper, let me tell you. So Andrew Wakefield claimed that they conducted these biopsies on the GI tract of these 12 children, and all of them had either microscopic or clinical findings of disease.
I think it's really interesting that he was interested in the gut because RFK is really interested in the gut.
He is. Wakefield also claimed that 9 of these 12 children developed a regressive version of autism within a very short time period.
I feel like there's a but coming.
There is a but coming. First of all, these 12 children in the case series that he claimed got the MMR vaccine and then had this bowel disease and autism, this whole thing that he was trying to develop. When people examine the actual medical records, 3 of them didn't even have autism.
So you're telling me 25% of their very, very, very small, convenient sample that he has chosen doesn't even have autism?
That's right.
Okay, keep going.
So 3 of them don't even have autism, and he also described all 12 children as previously normal, meaning all milestones, no issues. But in fact, 5 of the 12 children had well-documented pre-existing delays prior to receiving the MMR vaccine.
So 3 of the children do not even have autism, and 5 already have very well-documented delays prior to the administration of the vaccine. So you're telling me 8 of the 12, now 75% of his study doesn't even qualify for his results.
That's right. And he also described these these bowel changes in kids, this non-specific colitis in all of them. So he said all 12 of these children had a non-specific colitis or inflammation of the colon. But when people actually went back and looked, 9 of the 12 children had normal findings in their colon, and somehow later the pathological finding was changed to non-specific colitis.
That just sounds like a straight up lie.
It is a lie, and that's why I call it a hoax. The scientific community calls it a hoax because these were children that had normal findings and someone manipulated the finding in order to suggest that there was a relationship there where there was none.
So you're telling me it's a small study, it's a bad study design. On top of that, 75% of the children included in the study either don't have autism at all or had significant neurological developmental issues prior, and data was manipulated.
But wait, that's not all. That's not all. Andrew Wakefield suggested that these children developed changes in their cognitive status and their developmental abilities and their social relationships days after the vaccines. But when independent people went into the records, he falsified all of these timelines, and the relationship was months after the vaccine, if at all.
Cool.
No, but don't worry. At the time, he was founding a private company with a parent of one of these 12 children worth $40 million, suggesting that he was going to provide technology to help people diagnose this non-specific colitis that he made up.
Cool. So like no conflicts of interest at all then?
No conflicts of interest at all. But before the paper even comes out, he's holding press conferences. He's attacking the MMR vaccine. He is creating public fear among parents,
which has expanded and still exists today.
And in the years since, when people have really looked at this study, we've been able to totally debunk everything that there ever was in this case series of 12 people. But even at the time when this came out, people were like, oh, wow, this is an important finding. Let's replicate it. And the medical school that he was at was asking him over and over, wow, you found a really important finding with 12 people. Let's set up a gold standard trial. Let's replicate this. Let's get a larger sample and let's find it. And from the very beginning, he refused.
Because his study was, how'd you say, crap?
I think that is how you say it. And he refused to participate in any replication studies. And there have been no replication studies that have ever found this again.
Including a study with over 500,000 Danish children.
Which is nearly all of the children in the country, because his findings were manipulated and manufactured. And yet the damage of this persists. You know, when you are a public figure, when you go out and you're saying all these big statements about MMR and autism, parents care about their kids. I care about my kid. I don't want to do anything that's unsafe. But he's spreading lies. He was spreading lies. And this whole case series of 12 children has since been withdrawn from the medical literature. And, you know, despite this study getting retracted, despite him being discredited, despite losing his medical license, all of these things, Andrew Wakefield continues.
So he loses his medical license. This paper is retracted. The Lancet makes a statement about it. It's called a hoax. It is publicized. Does he suffer? What happens to him next?
He continues on. So he is a person who just keeps popping up in all the wrong places. In March 2011, he has an appearance in Minneapolis addressing Somali Americans, and following that appearance, outbreak of measles.
So the things that I do know about Andrew Wakefield is that after the scandal in the UK, he moves, of course, to the United States and really continues in this anti-vaccine movement. He advocates against bills that mandate vaccinations in schools. He made millions of dollars and dates actresses, including
a wealthy Australian supermodel, Elle Macpherson,
from 2017 to 2019. So, you know, way after he's already in trouble and discredited, but here he is.
And in 2018, the World Health Organization starts to warn that there's a global resurgence of measles, with vaccine hesitancy being one of the top threats to human health. And he caused this. And here we are in America now in 2025, measles is back. It appears that this outbreak is spreading and it's likely to be endemic.
Vaccines are at an all-time low. Measles is at what I think will soon be an all-time high in recent years. And the origin story is Andrew Wakefield.
And this case series of 12 children that is completely discredited, a hoax, and manipulated data. And all of the research that has been done since then has not produced any evidence of this.
It sounds like he's supremely qualified to be tapped by President Trump to lead healthcare in America.
Oh my gosh, is he going to be the next nomination? I'm just not even ready for that. We've had so many.
And so that's the true in-depth detailed story about where this idea that vaccines cause autism comes from.
This absolute hoax coming from this retracted medical study with absolutely no evidence backing it. So if you're in a situation where your friends or family are suggesting the MMR vaccine causes autism, you can refer them to this podcast.
And one of the books that's been on my shelf for a long time, Stephanie has read it and has recommended it to me, is called The Doctor Who Fooled the World, Andrew Wakefield's War on Vaccines. It's an investigative piece by Brian Deere.
Brian Deere, who has dedicated decades of his life to uncovering and investigating Andrew Wakefield and this hoax. Published in 2020, this book has messages that continue to today.
Maybe we can end on a quote from the New Indian Express.
Yes, please tell me this quote.
Can one person change the world? Ask Andrew Wakefield.
Oh no. Oh no. I hope that if one person can change the world in such a negative way, I hope that we can all believe that one person can change the world in a positive way.
If you just think about the $1 million that we're spending to disprove something that was never even real.
This was one man's hoax, and we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars disproving, and yet it persists.
Rolling forward, Dr. Sister Science Facts.
Doesn't even make any sense.
Doesn't even make any sense. And that is where we will leave you for this week. I'm Stephanie Rowland.
You didn't say doctor, so I feel weird saying I'm doctor.
Oh no, I am Dr. Stephanie Rowland. Let me tell you, I am Dr. Stephanie Rowland. I am board eligible, board certified. I am licensed, all of the things.
And I'm Dr. Alicia Rowland.
And this is the Rollin' Forward podcast.
Reach out to us on the socials, or you can send us an email at rollinforwardshow. That's ROLIN_show@gmail.com.
Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to hearing from you next week when we'll be on vacation and we'll have a mini episode for you.
Until next time.
Thank you.
Rolling forward, Dr. Sister Science Facts.
I think the hardest part is spelling our last name. It's one L, no S.
I get all sorts of spellings, including A's and D's and other letters in there.
I don't know how you get A's in there.